Have you ever wondered why a strange little man would demand a child just for spinning straw into gold? Why his name, just a name, could destroy him? And why this story, this bizarre, twisted little fairy tale, exists in almost every culture on Earth? We know him as Rumplestiltskin, a goblin, a trickster, a bedtime villain who dances by firelight and speaks in riddles. But what if I told you he's not a villain? He's not even fiction. What if this story wasn't a tale for children, but a coded memory, passed down from a time before kings and castles, before books, before gods, before names? Because buried beneath this tale is something far older, a secret whispered for 4,000 years, a truth so ancient, so powerful, that once you hear it, you'll never look at fairy tales the same way again. Once, there was a poor miller, and one reckless lie. To impress the king, he claimed his daughter could spin straw into gold. The king, greedy, suspicious, ruthless, summoned the girl to his castle. No questions, no mercy. He locked her in a chamber overflowing with straw and gave her one command. By morning, turn it to gold or die. She wept, because the truth was simple. She knew nothing of magic, nothing of gold. And then, just before midnight, the door creaked open. A man stepped inside. Small, twisted, not quite human, eyes gleaming with something otherworldly. He offered help, but not for free. First her necklace, the next night, her ring. Each morning the king returned, demanding more. More gold, more proof, more lies she could not sustain. On the third night, she had nothing left. And so, the little man made his final offer. He would help her one last time. But in return, he wanted her firstborn child. Terrified, trapped, she agreed. By morning, the straw was gold. The king was pleased. He married her. She became queen. A year passed. She bore a child and forgot the deal. Until one cold night, he came back, not with rage, but with quiet certainty. He had come to collect. She begged, offered riches, jewels, lands, but he refused. Something living, he said, is dearer to me than all the treasures of the world. And yet, perhaps moved by sorrow, he gave her a final chance. If she could guess his name, his true name, within 3 days, she could keep the child. She tried every name she could think of, sent messengers to every village, but the answer was always the same. No, until the third night. One messenger returned, shaken. In the forest, past the fox's den, he had seen something strange. A fire, a little man, dancing in circles, singing to the trees. Today I'll bake, tomorrow I'll brew. Then I'll fetch the queen's new child, too. It's good that no one knows my game, because Rumplestiltskin is my name. That night, when the man appeared again, the queen looked him in the eye and spoke the name. Rumplestiltskin. He froze, eyes wide, face twisted in horror. Who told you? Who told you? He shrieked. He stomped the floor so hard he vanished into the earth. And in some tellings, he tore himself in two. But the queen held her child, and the spell was broken, or so it seemed. Most people think the brothers Grimm wrote fairy tales. They didn't. They collected them, wandering from village to village, notebook in hand, gathering whispers, before they were lost forever. And Rumplestiltskin was one of the strangest. But Jacob Grimm believed something others did not. He believed these stories were ancient, older than Europe, older than kingdoms, older than history itself. And he might have been right. In 2016, a team of researchers from Durham University and the new University of Lisbon decided to test that idea. using evolutionary biology, not to study animals or plants, but to trace the bloodlines of stories. They compared thousands of folk tales across cultures, analyzed how certain plots evolved, how motifs spread like living organisms, and what they discovered was astonishing. The tale we call Rumplestiltskin belongs to a story pattern known as the name of the supernatural helper. And that pattern, it didn't begin in the forests of Germany or the halls of medieval castles. It began over 4,000 years ago, back when writing was young, when cities were made of mud brick, when gods still walked beside men. Now that doesn't mean the exact story of Rumpelstiltskin came from the Bronze Age, but the bones of it did. The impossible task, the mysterious figure, the terrible bargain, the name that unravels power. This tale structure appears again and again. In Africa, in the Middle East, across Asia, in tribal folklore and ancient myths, always the same rhythm, different names, different faces, but the same code. So the question is no longer, where did this story come from? The real question is, why did humanity remember it for 4,000 years? Why did this tale survive plagues, empires, religions, and revolutions, while others were forgotten? What truth is it carrying beneath its straw and riddles and gold? To answer that, we have to understand the one thing every version of this story holds in common: the spinning, straw into gold. It sounds like a trick, a simple symbol of greed. But it's not. To the ancients, spinning wasn't a chore, it was cosmic. Across myth and culture, the act of spinning shows up again and again, not as labor, but as the very weaving of fate. In ancient Greece, they were called the Moirai, 3 sisters who spun, measured, and cut the thread of life. No king, no hero escaped their thread. In Norse myth, they were the Norns sitting at the roots of the world tree, spinning the fates of men and gods alike. And in the ancient Vedic traditions of India, the entire universe was imagined as a golden tapestry woven from sacred thread that held reality itself together. To spin was to create life, to shape destiny, to touch the fabric of the divine. So when the miller's daughter spins straw into gold, she's not just surviving. She's performing a ritual, a transformation, the reshaping of the worthless into the immortal. And that gold, it's not just treasure. Gold was sacred. It doesn't rust. It reflects light. It endures through fire and time. To the ancients, gold wasn't just wealth. It was a symbol of divinity, of purity, of eternity. This is the real magic of the tale. Not the spinning, not the little man, but the idea that something ordinary, something forgotten, trampled, discarded, can become something divine. In later centuries, this became known as alchemy, not the science of lead into gold, but the spiritual art of turning base matter into something higher, turning the self into something sacred. And that's what Rumpelstiltskin represents. He's not just spinning thread. He's performing the old alchemy, the kind that came before laboratories, before formulas, before books, the kind that whispered of fire and soul and sacrifice. So where did this knowledge come from? This power to turn straw into gold, to shape fate with a thread, to transform the worthless into the sacred. The answer lies far deeper than fairy tales. Back in a time when fire was more than heat, it was revelation. Let's return to the dawn of the Bronze Age, a time when humanity unlocked a terrible secret: that 2 ordinary metals, copper and tin, could be fused to create bronze. It was a moment that changed the world, because suddenly, stone shattered, tools evolved, weapons were born, and those who knew how to summon this magic were no longer seen as men. They were gods, or demons, or something in between. They worked in smoke. Their hands glowed with fire. They pulled metal from stone and reshaped the earth. To the villagers who watched from a distance, they weren't craftsmen. They were sorcerers, and ancient myth agrees. In the Book of Enoch, once considered scripture, divine beings called the Watchers descend from the heavens. They teach humanity forbidden arts, metalworking, enchantments, weapons of war. In the Bible, there's Tubal-Cain, a forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. Among the Hittites, Hameleh the veiled metal god. Among the Sumerians, Kothar, builder of temples. Among the Norse, dwarves hidden underground, crafting divine tools. And in the Slavic world, Svarog, god of fire and creation. They appear in every culture, always in shadows, always near flame, always not quite human. They live in mountains, they speak in riddles, they arrive uninvited and vanish without a trace, just like the little man in our story. And yet he doesn't ask for gold. He doesn't want riches or titles or kingdoms. He wants a child. Why? Rumplestiltskin doesn't ask for gold. He doesn't want jewels. He doesn't even try to steal the kingdom. What he asks for is a child, and he never says why. He only offers a single clue. Something living is dearer to me than all the treasures of the world. In fairy tales, the meaning is left vague, maybe even softened for little ears for bedtime. But in the ancient world, that meaning was clear, because when humans sought the impossible, when they begged the gods for help, for rain, for crops, for life itself, they offered what was most precious, the firstborn. In ancient Carthage, archaeologists uncovered graves filled with tiny bones, infants offered to Moloch, the god of fire and power. In the Bible, Abraham is asked to sacrifice Isaac, his only son, as proof of his faith. Among the Celts, tales speak of children taken by fairies, swapped for changelings, spirits in disguise. And across Mesopotamia, Canaan, and the Levant stone altars were built not for worship, but for offering, real sacrifice. To us today, it sounds horrific, but to them, it was a transaction, a soul, in exchange for divine power. So when the little man demands the queen's child, he's not being cruel. He's following an ancient pattern, a pattern as old as fire, as old as fear, because the price of magic was always blood. But here's the twist. The girl wins, not with weapons, not with prayers, but with something far more dangerous, a name. In the end, Rumplestiltskin isn't defeated by magic, or strength, or even love. He's undone by a name. The girl speaks it, and the spell, this ancient, unbreakable curse, shatters. But why? What makes a name so powerful? To us, today, a name is just a label, a way to identify, to call, to remember. But in the ancient world, a name was everything. It was identity. It was essence. It was the blueprint of the soul. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs had two names, one public, one secret. That secret name was guarded fiercely, because to know it was to control their spirit in the afterlife. In Jewish mysticism, the names of God are sacred, too powerful to be spoken, because uttering them wasn't just prayer, it was creation. In the Testament of Solomon, the wise king commands demons, but not through force. Through naming, he calls them forth. He asks one question: what is your name? And once he knows it, they are his. Because in ancient belief, to speak a name was to unlock the code of a being, its origin, its power, its weakness. To name something truly was to have dominion over it. So when the queen whispers Rumplestiltskin, she's not just saying a word. She's unmaking him, cracking the mask, revealing the thing behind the trick, breaking the spell that bound her child. And in that moment, He cannot stand it. He shrieks, he stomps, he tears himself apart, because the one thing he tried to hide, the one truth that held his power, was now known. And in myth, there is no greater death than to be named. In every version of the tale, the name isn't found in a book. It isn't whispered by a priest. It isn't written in a scroll. It's overheard in the forest, by firelight, spoken in rhythm, not speech. Today I'll bake, tomorrow I'll brew. Then I'll fetch the queen's new child too. It's good that no one knows my game, because Rumplestiltskin is my name. It's not just a chant. It's not just a riddle. It's a spell, because to the ancients, the language of gods and spirits wasn't normal speech. It was song. It was pattern. It was sound that shaped the world. In the Indo-European tradition, the divine didn't talk, they sang. In the Bible, creation begins not with tools, but with a voice. Let there be light. And there was. In ancient Egypt, Ptah, the creator god, didn't mold the world. He spoke it into existence. In the Vedic hymns, reality itself was held together by sound, by sacred vibrations. Language wasn't for communication. It was a power source, a sacred tool to bend the fabric of reality. And perhaps that's what Rumplestiltskin was doing, dancing alone in the woods, singing not in madness, but in ritual, speaking in a tongue older than kingdoms, older than memory, the kind of language that only God's spirits and the forgotten fire-bringers once knew. And in that moment, as his name becomes known, the sacred song breaks. Because once the divine is named, once its rhythm is unraveled, its power disappears, just like the old gods. When men stopped singing their songs, so what? Was Rumplestiltskin a demon, a trickster, a forgotten god, or something else entirely? A memory, a fragment of a time when fire meant magic, when names could destroy, when thread bound the stars together. We think of him as a fairy tale villain, ugly, greedy, strange. But look deeper. He spins like the fates. He speaks in riddles like the gods. He bargains like an ancient priest. He doesn't want a throne. He doesn't crave riches. He wants a soul, a child, a legacy. And when his true name is spoken, he doesn't fight. He vanishes, just like the beings of old, the fire-bringers, the secret makers, the ones who walked among us, until they were named, until they were known, until they were forgotten. But fairy tales don't forget. They remember what history buries. They carry the coded truth forward, wrapped in straw and gold, in riddles and rhymes, in names that echo through time. Because maybe, just maybe, Rumplestiltskin was never meant to be understood. He was meant to be remembered.